Andrew John had a handline. His father had helped him to make it. Shown him how to tie the knots in the nylon and how to use a ma's pain to busk the hooks. Andrew John kent how to tie on the lead with a sheet bind, to run the bottom and then work the line to make politics think the busket fleas was piri fish or something to eat.
Dialect here in Shetland exists outside of ideology. It isn't tied to a political party, it isn't tied to one ethnic group. It's the language that has been used here and is unique to the Shetland Isles. The same way as our relationship to the sea is unique, our relationship to the water, and that is an awful important lesson that we do not want to lose. This link to the past, this link to the way that our ancestors spoke, and if we're new to Shetland, the way that the folk lived here and survived here spoke afore was.
It's a very visual dialect. The words, they sound like what it is as well. That's kind of how I feel. It is such a beautiful dialect when it's spoken. And if it does continue, it will develop. It will change in pretty ways as well. Pick things up here, there and away.
The history of Shetland has been one of folk coming and going, trading, buying and selling, different cultures coming and meeting. Then the dialect has formed out of that. So the origins of Shetland dialect is a very multinational one. We lots of different languages, leaving lots of different legacies ahint them to where we are today.
With that Sam, Willie looked at our and saw a smudge of light to port, the wasting. And to starboard to Sam, the houses of Broch. Listening careful for the bob rack at the point, Willie yelled, "Mac full helm to port." And she swung around. He felt through his feet the tide gripping the keel, dragging her, racing into the sound.
Well, I suppose it started with the schools and the kirk you spoke. English was the language of power. And they did try many, many times to eradicate the dialect simply by getting bairns to speak English in school. And that was for centuries. But we still have a Shetland dialect. It's very strong. Maybe it's under threat, its vocabulary, but we still have the way we speak, and we still have wader words and a sort of words. The crofting might be gone, and the crofting words less used, like qua casts we a tushker nu, but there are plenty of words we still have, especially to describe what you think about folk. Yeah, she's just a trucker and things like that.
Mum, when she gid to school, she was a very good lass, but she had a rebellion, I suppose, against this idea of speaking English at school. That she kind of felt when we were in Shetland, we should be speaking Shetland, but at that time, it was expected that they spoke English at school. And I think Mum kind of decided that she would speak English in English class, but she would speak dialect the rest of the time, and that was that. And so I suppose I kind of grew up with that story, I suppose, of Mum being it's no huge rebellion, but a pretty bit rebellious, I suppose. I think I was quite proud of her as a young lass, thinking, yeah, we should be speaking dialect. And then I suppose on top of that, there was the idea of how or when you should speak dialect. Like, my mind was being taught that when we spoke to our elders, to granny and granddad, and we didn't say do or dee, that was disrespectful, so we had to say you. So there's this idea that it was somehow disrespectful, that speaking your dialect wasn't good enough, maybe in certain contexts.
I was the first teen to speak dialect on BBC Radio Shetland way back in 1978. Can't believe how fast the years have gone. But they were a terrible protest. Folk just loathed me. They did not want to hear the dialect on the radio doing things like the wader or anything like that.
I definitely didn't speak with such a strong dialect when I was at the school. this is probably a more modern me than I'm kind of going back the way instead of forwards. But I probably spoke like everybody else in Lerwick at the time, so that was kind of, there was a slight ring of dialect in it, but it wasn't much because Lerwick, there's that many folk going through, you kind of have to kind of have a standardised language so everybody understands, because it is that an international place, the harbour and all the rest of it. And it always has been. The basics will probably always be there, but I think it's always going to be a struggle to keep the dialect alive in Shetland. Even say it's just the Gaelic. They'll be speaking away, but they don't have Gaelic words to describe certain things, so they just describe them the English words. And you can see that happening with a local dialect as well, because especially things like modern technology and stuff like that, they never had a word to describe that, so it's going to have to find something, either invent the word or just use the word that's out there at the moment.
And I think that kind of stems from the fact that to be polite, you had to speak English. To be proper, you spoke English. The Shetland was for being at home, not for being out. The public tongue was English. And I broke a taboo when I got on the public airwaves, the BBC public airwaves, and started to speak dialect. I don't know when it was, but sometime in the 80s, the dialect became more acceptable on radio.
I think for anybody that's grown up in Shetland but then ends up with a very middle of the road accent that doesn't stand them apart from anybody else, they're missing out on something. Because in 23 years of being South, my knapping to folk still seemed very broad. Folk would often ask, like, when did you get here? Like, I've been here 20 years. Folk, mentioned that they could understand me, but it was definitely something that stood me apart. And I think for anybody that is wanting to do stuff online or in a kind of international stage now, you are looking for a way to set you apart, a story. Who are you and what are you about? And that is a huge part of why we are for Shetland. And it's no then to put folk down that don't have it, but I think reframing it is something that it is positive. It is something that should be celebrated. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. It doesn't mean that you are not educated.
Even if young folk aren't using it themselves or in between themselves when they're together, doesn't mean they winna ken the language as they grow up and think more about why they are and why they want to be. So if Shetland is a society that's concerned about keeping young folk here in the Isles and about giving them the chance to make links with the generations of the past who are bed here, then I think dialect's a big part of that. And it's important for grandfolk, parents, mums and dads, everybody to keep using the dialect so that all the different vocabulary and ways of saying things aren't lost, because it has a value.
I really don't know what's happening now. Shetland Forwards is in quite a strong position where the older ones now are handing over to much younger folk that are equally passionate about the dialect. So as far as that goes, I'm very happy. But I don't know what's going to come of our dialect. We can only keep it if we speak it. And that's why I'm so pleased that there is things like the Shetland Library has their annual Young Writers competition and their prizes for the dialect writing as well as the writing in English. And I mean the judges. And it's just a sheer delight to read the dialect that the bairns can write.
It's one thing to say let's value a variety of different things, but you also want to know who you are. Like me and you want to know who we are and who you next meet after this, how they fit into that and what ties us together. And if Shetland is one of that things, if Shetland's one of the things that makes who we are unique, let's not create a society where we simply want to mirror England, America, China, whatever. We want to be proud of who we are and value what makes us unique.
Music sure made thundering and wild for whiz, winning and sweet for whiz, soothing and soft for whiz, come day and go day sure never felt tired of whiz. Worn out be bedtime, she whooshed the black legs a whiz. None was to sleep and sang through the night to whiz. Loved whiz, war midder, the sea.